Welcome everyone to this week's LinkedIn Live. So excited to have Abby Kohut with us, checking in from Florida. I've known Abby for many, many years, and she did correct me on a couple of things. She is from Brooklyn, not New Jersey, and she calls herself an introvert too, not an extrovert. I'm not sure where I got that from. But to start out with, Abby, we talked about this before. You are in a lanai right now,
That's
correct?
right. I
And
certainly am.
and you're in Florida. So what exactly is a lanai?
So a lanai is basically a covered porch. So if you're in Brooklyn, it's a covered porch. If you're in New Jersey, it's a covered porch. If you're in Florida, it's a lanai. So it's just a snobby way of saying a covered porch in Florida.
And so, what's the biggest difference between New Jersey and Florida? I mean, besides the weather that you've noticed.
Um, it's definitely the weather. That reason I came down here, literally, oh, by the way, you're going to see cars driving by because I'm literally outside in a covered porch. This is where I do my work every day. You might hear people doing, you know, weeding and things like that because people do that too at the most inopportune times.
Hmm.
Um, During interviews, yeah. What did you ask me?
No, I just said, what's
Oh,
the
the
biggest,
difference
what's the
between,
difference between New
yeah.
Jersey and Florida besides, is it a different lifestyle thing?
Um, I, well, people don't, people drive like crazy people here. And I thought they were crazy in New Jersey. They're certainly crazy in Brooklyn. But in Florida, there's no cops anywhere. So people just do whatever they want to do. People drive, people make crazy turns, and there's no cops to stop them. So, yeah, that's pretty much what goes on
All
here.
right, a few shout outs to start. I don't know if you remember Don Nusner or not. Um, I know you know Dawn Smith Henry.
I probably know everybody, but it's been a long time since
Okay.
I've seen anybody. So I probably don't remember
All right.
practically everybody except you, Ken. I remember.
Well, I mean, the funny thing about it is we've been networking for many, many years. And, you know, for those that don't know you that well, I met you 14 something years ago at an event, local event in New Jersey. We stayed in touch. And
Oh,
then you did a whole thing where you did this tour of the whole country.
yes,
And I don't know if you are doing that virtually now, or if you want to talk a little bit about, because I think the goal was to help 1 million job seekers, then, if I'm not mistaken.
yes, I had lofty goals. I did actually leave my job. So I was a recruiter, full-time recruiter, and I did actually quit my job in order to, and I remember telling this to my boss. Um, so I told my boss, I said, I'm going to come back in 6 months. I'm going to drive around for 6 months helping job seekers, teaching them how to get jobs. And she said, you're never coming back. So I want to fill your position and I want you to train the person. So we trained the receptionist how to be a recruiter. And she was right. I didn't go back because I did it for 5 years, driving around the country in an RV and visited all kinds of places. I went from New Jersey all the way to California, and everywhere in between for 5 years, and it was the best 5 years of my career, I would say. But things like this have to come to an end because I was not paid to do any of that. So eventually, I had to come back to reality, and I became a recruiter again.
I'm smiling
And
at the car go by.
I know, and you're gonna hear noises, yeah. Um, so yeah, so I've been a full-time recruiter ever since I came back, which was 2017, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And but I'm a contract recruiter, so I'm an independent recruiter. I don't work for anybody. I work for myself, which means I can do things like this. And I can say I'm going to take off an hour and do things like this, which is great.
So just a couple of things. Scott Dell, who comes in from Southern California, and then Bob, they all drive like crazy because the only driving lessons were from the backseat of a taxi in New Jersey.
That's probably true. It's probably true.
So what I find a lot, and do you do certain types of, you were doing pharma, I think, for a while, and
Hmm.
do you still have that um, website with all the links to the jobs that you had going
I
on
do.
before?
Yeah, so I am doing farmer recruiting, but I also have a website which is called staffingsymphony.com. Symphony like the orchestra, staffing like staffing. Staffingsymphony.com. And there's 3,000 jobs on there, and you can all go look at them. And the best thing you can do, first of all, is upload your resume there. And the second best thing you can do is set up an alert. So when other jobs come in the future, you can apply for them, because the jobs are not like every day there are brand new jobs. Literally every day. There's probably about 20 or 30 brand new jobs. And these jobs are from headhunters. So they're not my jobs. They're other headhunters' jobs. And so I can't fill 3,000 jobs, but other people can do it. And we can, if you apply for one of those jobs and I see that you're qualified, I can reach out to that headhunter and say, hey, definitely take a look at this person's resume. Also, what do I want to say about that? The fact is that these jobs are probably not on, this is a big chart going on. These people are not, these jobs are probably not on other job boards, because headhunters don't like posting jobs on job boards. So they post them in this network. All of us can fill them for each other, and that's why they're not on job boards.
So how did you kind of come up with the idea, or how did you network with all the different recruiters to build this out?
Funny thing. So I also lost my job after COVID, just like many of you. I was recruiting. I had like 15 positions open. Everything was good. It was pharma. And I thought that COVID would happen and my jobs would come back in about the summer. That's what I was kind of thinking. So I was kind of hanging on. And then I realized that wasn't happening. So I took a job selling PPE, which is personal protective equipment. You all know that now. But
Mm-hmm.
at the time, you didn't all know that. And yeah, so I was in sales again, and that was not fun at all. I just have to say, that was not fun at all. But it was something to keep my brain active, because I just couldn't sit home doing nothing. Like, that just couldn't work. So I tried sales. I did sales at the beginning of my career. I sold computer equipment. That was fun ish. But at some point, I knew that I had to do something else. And so I got into recruiting. But I thought that I could get back into sales and that it would go just as well. But no, it didn't. So I failed miserably at that. And then at the end of the summer, that's where I bumped into my network of headhunters, and that's how I got involved. So I've been involved with them for about 2 years.
So when you mention the type of recruiter you are, there's different types of recruiters, right?
Yeah.
So for those that are listening, um, there's a lot of what we call the bottom feeders that a lot of people get. There's someone like yourself. Can you explain some of the differences to the different types of recruiters that are out there?
Sure. Well, the first thing is I do contract recruiting. So I have companies that I actually have jobs for, and I fill those jobs. And I do those in traditional ways using websites, LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. So my jobs are all over LinkedIn. And then as far as the headhunting goes, there are two types of recruiters. There are contingency recruiters and there are retained recruiters. And so contingency recruiters get paid if they place somebody, and retained recruiters get paid only, they get paid regardless if they place somebody. So they get a fee, like they get 33% of your salary, and they get the first third, and then they get the second third, and then they get the third third based on what they do. So certain activities. I don't know what they do because I am not one of them. I'm more of a contingency recruiter.
So I'd be curious to get anyone who has any comments or questions, please bring them into the chat so we can talk about them as well. There's a lot of hot topics that are going on. One thing that happens a lot now, we've had a lot of job loss and the like, and one thing that I see that's a bit of a change is people are very willing to post that they've lost their job, and it's not so much a shame thing anymore, and they're looking to network out.
Oh, yeah.
Um, is that something that you see a lot of? And what do you think about that from a recruiting standpoint? If people saying, I just lost my job, and I'm available.
Yeah, so I remember this happening before 9/11. It was more of a stigma for people to have lost their job. But after 9/11, I think it all changed, in my opinion. And if a hiring manager says to me, this person is unemployed, I don't want to talk to them. It actually happened to me once in the past, let's say, month. A hiring manager said to me, I don't want to look at somebody who's unemployed. And I said to them, I said, that's completely ridiculous. Like, people that are unemployed, it could have happened, no, not to any fault of their own, blah, blah, blah. And the person said to me, it's not that. That's not what my issue is. They said that people who are unemployed are more likely to take a job because they're desperate and then leave us hanging. Like, they'll take the job and then they'll go when they find the right job. And I said, well, that's true, but if we give them the right offer and give them the right hiring manager and give them the right opportunity and give them the right future, they'll stay. And he said, you're right. So I was able to convince him.
Now, the other thing that happens a lot of is that now job offers are being rescinded, which seems to be happening. I don't know if it's happening as much as they're saying, but it actually did happen to me. I had a job offer was rescinded on the Friday before I was supposed to start.
Ah,
And that seems to be a new thing. And whether it's due to the economy or something else, is that something that you've come across or heard about in the industry?
I haven't heard about that, but that's awful.
Yeah.
I really haven't heard that. So people that have interviewed with me have not told me that. So I have not heard that. I feel like I'm in my own little bubble now because I'm actually doing recruiting and I'm not as much doing work with job seekers anymore. So I don't hear stories like that. But thank you for telling me that. That's awful. That's plain awful.
Yeah, it is one thing. I mean, again, it's one of the things on LinkedIn, and we've talked about this a lot amongst us in the groups, is that hiring managers are really not part of the conversation. Recruiters are part of the conversation, and so are us as coaches and job seekers. Love to get them involved in the conversation in a very productive way. And I'm not sure if that's something I'm just noticing or if that's just a tendency in the industry.
So I would be wondering what did they tell you when they rescinded your offer? Because there's probably a lot of reasons why offers are rescinded. One is probably finance, right? Something
Mhm.
happened to the budget. But what else? What could be another reason?
Well, what happened to me was that they never got approval for the rec. Apparently, I found that
Um,
out. They did never got approval for the rec, so they had to pull the job. And the recruiter was one of the. I mean, from a recruiter standpoint, the recruiter was absolutely horrified
yeah.
and all that. But you bring up a good point. You're in a certain bubble there, and I've talked to other recruiters too. You only know what you're aware of.
Right.
I don't know if you remember Alex Freund. Um,
How can I not remember Alex
Alex,
Freud?
Alex Freund, who wanted to know a typical interview question: where will you be in 3 to 5 years? And I guess my question to you is, what are some of the questions that you would like to see asked besides that of someone who's interviewing? To be part of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, so certainly we want to know as an interviewer, where would you be in 3 to 5 years? And I love to know about what was your favorite manager? What was a manager that you didn't particularly like? Um, those are important to me. Um, so I'll tell you a really tricky interview question that somebody once asked me. Um, I had a CFO ask me if there was one reason we shouldn't hire you. He said, you're a recruiter. So if there was one question that we should ask you, no, it was, is there one reason why we shouldn't hire you? Because you're a recruiter, you know the reasons why, right?
Mhm.
Is there one reason why we shouldn't hire you? I thought that was a great question. And I had to think really fast, and I did. And I said, it might be because I have these short stints at companies. And if you asked me why, like if you knew me, you would understand why I had these short stints. And that worked. And I ended up getting the job.
And
Um,
someone asked, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So, I mean, that was a tricky question. but I don't think most people ask that question. But that's a tricky one. But yeah, definitely asking about where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years, and the answer to that needs to be something that's in the company. So you can say things like, I'd like to be a manager, or I'd like to be a director, or I'd like to progress in the company. But don't say things like, I'd like to own my own company. Someone said that to me in the past 2 months. Someone said that. So we can't hire you. If you want to own your own company, you're not going to be with us because you're going to own your own company. So your answer needs to be something that's within the company. Anything that's within the company is the right answer for that.
So this is a question that came up, and it's a valid one. What's your opinion about work gaps?
Mm-hmm. I think myself and every other recruiter out there believes that as long as there is something you are doing that makes sense within the gaps, like for example, COVID, right? So if COVID happens and you have a gap, like everybody has a gap, including me. We all have gaps because of COVID. That's a completely reasonable answer. But the other reasonable thing, so I hear a lot of times um, stay-at-home moms will say, I've been unemployed for 7 years. And I always say to them, I think you're mistaken. You haven't been unemployed for 7 years. You've been employed as a mother in the hardest job there is, not making any money. That's what you've been. So please don't think of yourself as unemployed. And the many of you during COVID took care of people. That's employed. That's not unemployed. I didn't take care of anybody. So I really was unemployed. That's why I was selling PPE. Um, but I think it's really important that you look at yourself and think of what were you doing that could be considered employment, and mention those kinds of things. And that's what you did during the gaps. Some of you took a vacation, took a trip to Germany or something. Maybe that's not employed, but that is an activity. So people just don't want to think that you're sitting at home watching TV. I used to say watching Oprah, but Oprah's not on TV. Then I said watching Ellen. Ellen's not on TV. Clearly someone else needs to be on TV.
One thing that I also wonder about from a recruiter standpoint are job specs, because a lot of us talk about how job specs are either a wish list or they're not really
Oh my
well
goodness.
thought out. And I've heard from so many recruiters that they're caught in the middle. They're trying to convince the company that what you need may not be on the job spec, or that someone may have other skills. So I
Right.
guess is that an acknowledgement that that's kind of true? And how do you deal with that from a recruiter to trying to convince the company what they need may not be what they're actually asking for?
Well, so first of all, the way job descriptions are created is, number one, we go back to our past, and not me. So the hiring manager. The hiring manager will go back to their past job and pull it up and give it to me and say, this is the job, without even reading it, probably half the time. That's the first thing. The second thing is they'll say to me, I don't have a job description. Can you write it? And I'll say to them, in my brain, I'll say, no, I can't write it. It's not my job. Like, how can I write your job? Let's say it's the director of electrical engineering, which I've never filled before. I don't know why I said that. But let's just say it's that. I can't write that job for you. I'm not your, I can't. But what I can do is I can go onto Monster or LinkedIn and pull it up for you and give it to you, and then you can write it. But what I'm saying is the way job descriptions are written these days is kind of loosey-goosey. So if you have stuff that is not on the job description, your job is to tell me that you have it and why it's important that it should be on the job description. That's it.
The other thing that I get a lot of is people that want to make career changes,
Yep.
and it's normal. And my mindset is some of the skills are transferable, and some aren't. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to work for Facebook or Google and you don't really know the first thing about IT, you may want to work there, but it's not a realistic thing.
Right.
So, what do you say to someone that wants to do make a career change or a pivot out of need or out of want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great if you want to make a career change. Like I could have made a career change into sales of PPE, right? If that worked out well, then I would have stuck with that. But it wasn't right. So the thing is, if you're going to make a career change, it would be helpful if you had some experience in the new career. And some experience in the new career could just be school. So if you go to school for whatever it is that you want to learn, then it will be a lot easier for someone to take you seriously. But just saying, I want to get into healthcare just because I want to, it's not going to make somebody decide to hire you. Also, it's probably a lot easier to get into a new field as a temp or contractor than it is as a full-timer, right? So I got into pharmaceutical recruiting. I did not have pharmaceutical recruiting experience, and people don't like to hire people without pharmaceutical recruiting experience as a recruiter in pharma. The reason I got in is because I was unemployed at the time, and someone asked me if I wanted to do a temp job. And I told them I did not want to get into the pharmaceutical industry because I don't take drugs. I only take Advil. I also told them I didn't want to work in New Jersey. I wanted to work in the city for some reason. Don't know why. And then the other thing was I didn't want a fake job. So those of you that think that temporary jobs are fake jobs, please change your mind on that. Because I took that fake job in the pharmaceutical industry thinking that it's only 3 months. If I hate it, it'll be done in 3 months. And it's why you and I are talking today.
It's not the
That
only reason.
one job is why you and I are talking today.
So Dave Shuckman from PSG of Mercer and the Breakfast Club. Can promoting soft skills on your resume and LinkedIn help with changing a career or industry?
Certainly it can help, but I think that you need more than soft skills, honestly. I think you need more education, or you need something. You need something in the industry that can show that you have the experience in the industry. I think you do. I wish I could say soft skills would help, but I don't really think it does.
So, what are some of the mistakes that you see job seekers make? Um, whether it's on a resume or just in interviewing. I mean, what are some of the, because you've been around, you've been this for a long time, so I'm sure you've seen.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Cover letters. So I've been talking about cover letters for now 15, 20 years. When someone sends a cover letter, I read it. I'm in HR, right? So I'm in human resources. I read cover letters. And when someone sends them, it causes me to read them and then to send their resume to the hiring manager. I just do that because I appreciate the extra work that they put in. I think everyone should be sending cover letters. The other thing is, I didn't think thank you letters were a big deal. Honestly, I don't wait for them. I don't expect that I'm going to get one. But I had a couple of hiring managers recently tell me they didn't get a thank you letter, so they want to go with another person. It's really true. So I really think you should consider thank you letters. Emails, not letters.
Mm-hmm.
Emails, thank you emails. It's nice. I just got one from somebody that I interviewed today. I interviewed him 2 hours ago, and I got a thank you letter. Was it the best thank you letter I ever got? No, but it was a thank you letter. So there you go.
The other thing that I think about from job search is, and we hear this from job seekers, is the whole idea of ghosting. They never hear back,
Oh my God,
whether it's from a recruiter or a hiring manager, and it's not right in other case. Recruiters, and I know recruiters have a lot of things going on, as do job seekers and like. So it's a horrible practice. But to be fair, there are things that are really beyond your control as a recruiter, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we don't get back to you, it's probably because someone hasn't gotten back to us. It's because the process is still going on. We have nothing to say. So if we get back to you, we're saying nothing. But I have to tell you, that's what's going on with job seekers right now, is people are ghosting recruiters. People are just like, if a recruiter reaches out to you and you're not interested, just write back, I'm not interested. It's that simple. Because otherwise we're like contacting you. Okay, well, this person didn't text back, so now I should email them. Okay, now I should call them. Just, I'm not interested. That's all. I'm not interested. It's not as easy for us to say we're not interested because we have to write a whole email, a whole legal email. That's why. And we still, and yeah, I know that we ghost. I know we do that, but we're waiting for something to say. We don't have anything to say. If
No,
we know something, we might actually tell you.
no, I agree. I mean, I mean, you know, even under especially with the summer, that could be a thing. And one of the
Oh God, yeah.
one of the
Vacation.
misnomers I'd say is that this is a great time to network and get yourself together for all
Mhm.
different reasons, whether it's less people or a better chance to network. I mean, would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Oh, for sure. Summer for sure. But all times are good to network. Um, if you're gonna find a job, you're probably gonna get it because somebody's gonna refer you into a job. That's probably how it's gonna work. So yeah, I just filled a job for an associate director, and um, one person came from LinkedIn. She was great. One person was referred in. One person, I can't remember. Oh, the other person was referred in, and we got a late minute referral, and that person is going to be the one who gets the job. A referral will get the job over other people. So when you see a job online, what you want to do is go into LinkedIn and see if you can find somebody that works at the company who can walk your resume in the door, or somebody who knows the hiring manager who could walk your resume in the door. Just get your resume walked in the door for the positions that you really want.
So, what is your best practice when someone reaches out to you on LinkedIn? And we promised we would not talk a lot about LinkedIn. I mean,
That's okay.
um,
I
do
use it
you,
all day. It's okay.
no, first of all, how much time do you spend on LinkedIn as a recruiter? Is that part of what you do?
75% of the day.
75%. And what are some of the things you're looking for? I mean, we talk a lot about searches that recruiters do. I mean, you're doing searches like Boolean searches and like
Mm-hmm.
we all talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but mostly keyword. I'm less into the Boolean. I'm more into the keyword searches.
Hmm.
Yep, keyword. I mean, it's unbelievable how people just don't put what they do on their LinkedIn profile. And so we have to guess that you do it, you know?
Yeah, you did a presentation a while ago. I'll never forget it. You talked about it was an admin assistant job, and the person didn't put Microsoft Word or Excel or any of those skills on there,
Right.
so they couldn't be. You can't assume people know that.
Exactly. You can't assume people know what you do. So, like, I'm looking for a scientist right now, and they need to have experience with in vivo. In vivo. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to be able to figure out what they do. But if they have the word in vivo, I know that there's somebody I should share with the hiring manager.
So, Alex, with another comment, your opinion about this: job seekers should look much deeper into the culture of their future company instead of the job in the job description.
Yeah, I mean, not just the culture, but the future of their future company to make sure that their future company is going to be there in 3 to 5 years. Now, if you're going to a startup, there's really no guarantees there, but I would look for the future, make sure the company is going to be there in the future. And the job description is important, but I think what's even more important is the hiring manager.
Hmm.
So it's really important that you're working for the right person. I've learned this, took me a long time to learn this, but the hiring manager is the most important person. It's the most important thing. It's more important than the job description. It's more important than the company because the hiring manager, your manager, is going to make or break your career. If something happens to the company, the hiring manager is going to help you get a new job. You know, it's the hiring manager is very, very important to me. More than the job, way more than the job description.
So what are some ways you could find a hiring manager at a company? I mean,
Well, that's all about LinkedIn, right? So it's pretty easy to do it, although it's going to take some time. So, and if you have one particular job that you really like, that's the one you're going to want to spend time on. So for the hiring manager, let's say you're going to go look for the company and look for, let's pick a job. I'll go with electrical engineer, which I'm not hiring either. So let's go electrical engineer. So if it's an electrical engineer that you want to be, you go in and you look for the manager of the electrical engineers at that company. If you can't find that, then you look for the director of the electrical engineers at that company. If you can't find that, you go look for the VP of electrical engineers at that company. And then you look to see if you know somebody that knows that person. And if you don't know somebody that knows that person, do you know somebody that knows somebody that like that? Or do you know somebody at the company, right? So if you know somebody at the company, then they can maybe walk your resume to that person. And by the way, they'll get a referral fee probably at that company. So that's extra nice for them.
so what are the things you've seen change over the years in the industry from a job seeker perspective? I mean, what I'd be curious to know, I know one thing that's changed for me is I've been texting recruiters from time to time as
That's
opposed to
huge.
calling them up because
That's huge.
what?
It's huge. Texting. Yeah, I text all day long. And the worst thing is I get people that write to me on text and say, "Can you please email me?" And I'm just like, "Why? Why?" So maybe because they don't believe that I'm actually a recruiter. Maybe they believe it's spam. I get it. That would be a good reason. But I'm doing my work really fast. I've got a lot of jobs to fill. I don't have time to go. If I text you, it's because I don't have time to email you. It's because that's the way I do things. A lot of recruiters do things on text these days. A lot. And yes, some of them are spam. I agree. But just look at them. And if they ask you for your social security number, don't give it to them. It's that simple.
So a question came up here, how long before you follow up on a recent interview? I mean, is there a rule of thumb?
Yeah, I mean, I would do it after 5 days. Probably, I think that's a good number. I think if you do it sooner, it's probably too soon because the interviews are still going on and it could, the whole thing, the process could be taking 2 weeks or it could be taking 3 weeks. It just depends. Sometimes it's only taking one. And what I always say is if we're interested in you, you will know, right? So if I'm interested in you, I'm probably going to tell you while we're interviewing because I'm going to schedule you for more interviews. If I say that I want to send you to the hiring manager, I might not be as interested in you, or I might be sending you to the hiring manager. It depends on what's going on.
So the other thing that comes up a lot with us is the salary question, and a lot of times, a lot of jobs don't list the salary. Some states don't require it, and
Right.
sometimes you find as a job seeker you're applying for a certain job, and the salary is nowhere near what you think either way. So, I mean, do you feel that putting a salary range or something like that is a good idea in a job spec?
I think that you need to know in your heart what your salary range is. Okay. What's happening right now is job seekers are shooting for the moon. They're asking for a lot of money, and sometimes we can do it, and sometimes we can't. But I know you want to make $1 million. We all do. But there's a range that you have that is in your heart that you could earn and be okay. And if you have that range, I would tell the recruiter what that range is. Because if you shoot for a lot more than that, you might not be considered, right? We might
Yeah.
knock you out just because of your range being so high. It happens all the time.
You brought up a good point before. We've all been out of work, myself, you, other recruiters, and there's a certain empathy to that. And I
Sure.
would be willing to bet a lot of hiring managers have been out of work too over
Could
time.
be. Yeah. Could be in certain industries. Yeah.
So, in terms of the challenges that you have now, I mean, what are some of the things? I mean, one thing that came up in one of my groups is the idea that someone of a senior level does not need to make senior money, and they're okay with making less. So the
Mhm.
perception is that that person would not be able to afford, would not the company would not be able to afford to pay that person. But that's not the question here. The question is, how do you tell a company that here's a senior person who's very willing to work for less,
Yeah,
and
you put it on your application, right?
oh,
So we have an application in my company, and if you put that number that's not a gazillion dollars and you're willing to work at that level, then I'm willing to call you. But if you put a gazillion dollars, if you put $300,000 and you're applying for a manager job, I'm not going to call you. But if you put, 100 to 150 or whatever, something that's reasonable, then I'm going to call you regardless of the millions of years that you have in experience.
so I want to be respectful of your time, because I think you have a meeting coming up, if I'm not mistaken.
I do. I have a meeting before and after, but I love talking to you, Ken.
Then we can keep talking. I mean, I mean, for a
I'm
little
good.
while, I think. I mean, I'd
I'm
love to know who else is on the call here. I know I'll check later on. So, what is your opinion of doing this, by the way? Because this is your first StreamYard. I mean, what do you think?
It's cool. I It's very cool. And I appreciate the opportunity because I used to speak a lot,
I
a
know, I
lot.
was going to ask you about that. I used to have
And yeah,
those the 99 plus whatever calls. It was
I used to
99
speak a
plus
lot.
4, 99 plus 5.
I had my career wake up calls.
Yes.
I was doing a lot of this, and it's just this is what I'm doing now is where my heart is. My heart is in recruiting. But that means that I can recruit all of you. So you just have to go onto my website, staffingsymphony.com, and see if there are any jobs up there for you. And if not, set up an alert because there might be some in the future. So I could recruit you.
So why do
So
you love doing
one
it
of
so
the
much?
things, well,
Why
one
do
of
you
the
love
things
it?
that I do, so if I have, so on my headhunting side, right, Staffing Symphony is my headhunting side. If I have a candidate that goes on an interview, I coach them and I give them tips on how to do well in the interview. So I'm still doing some of this.
So why do you love doing this so much?
Recruiting.
Yeah.
So it all started when I started loving jigsaw puzzles. And I love, if you ask probably every recruiter out there, they love doing jigsaw puzzles or crossword puzzles or puzzles in general.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the kind of person that loves to put the dishes in the dishwasher. I love to make them all fit in there. I love to, when I'm going on a trip, I love to fit the suitcases in the trunk. So that's why this is what this is all about. When I was doing my Absolutely Abby work for so many years, this was 10 years of doing this. I was feeling that job seekers were making mistakes, lots of little teeny tiny mistakes. And I wanted to help them stop making mistakes. So that's why I did the Absolutely Abby work that I did.
And do you stay in touch with a lot of people here from New Jersey and the like? Do you ever come up and do presentations, whether it's
I'm not
virtual or not?
I'm not so much doing presentations, but yeah, I'm in touch with everybody. In touch with everybody. Just
Uh,
virtual.
so Terry
Because
Seaman, do you
it
remember
all
Terry
started,
Seaman?
of course. Hey Terry. So I'm in touch with all of you online. I see you all virtually, and I'm just not doing presentations so much anymore. But occasionally, someone like David Shuckman can get me to do a presentation, and you can.
So this is an interesting question. If someone on LinkedIn says they will check their schedule and get back to you, but never do, what's the best way to reach out or check again, or is that a polite way to dismiss a request?
Someone on LinkedIn. Was that a hiring manager or a recruiter? Can you tell us that?
LinkedIn. Well, if that
Someone
person
on
wants to
LinkedIn.
clarify, that would help. Another one, Judy Chanowitz.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Judy. Yeah, if you can come back and let us know a little more specifically, because I know what I've started to do is I live and die by my calendar, and I
Hmm.
have to send a calendar link sometimes to people because I don't want to double or triple book and have to say I made a mistake. And it's just kind of how I keep my life together. So sometimes when they say that, that could be what it means. I
I
mean,
think it's reality. Personally, I don't think that's someone blowing you off.
all
That's what
right.
I
So the
think.
answer is it was a recruiter. It was a recruiter that
Okay.
said that.
So now I'd love to hear the question. Do you have
Yes,
the
the
question?
question was if someone on LinkedIn
So if a recruiter says
that
he
they
would
would check their
check their
schedule and get back to you, but never do, what's the
um I would just follow up. I'd follow up. I'd ask them again. So I had a candidate recently tell me they were going to send me their resume, and that was like 3 4 days ago. And I thought they weren't interested, but I reached out to them again, and they said they didn't send it to me because I was supposed to send them the job description. So I forgot to send them the job description. So sometimes it's an honest mistake. People are busy. People have a lot going on in their lives, and it could be that it's honest. It's an actual honest thing, and they forgot. So I would follow up with them.
I think that's a reason why I do texting a lot now because I don't know about you, but my email folder is overwhelmed with
Yes,
so
mine
much
too.
stuff.
Yeah,
And you can put a better subject line or something like that in, but things are just going to, cut through the cracks.
yeah. That's why I like texting. So a lot of time, most times, I text my job seekers.
All right.
That's.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, Abby. Abby was one of the first people I had more than 2 years ago when we did this.
Hmm. I remember that.
And we had a lot of fun back then.
Hmm.
Um, Going to have a lot of fun again. I hope to be heading down to Florida. I was supposed to actually go down for spring training, but the start of the pandemic, and we know what happened with that.
And you learned three important facts today, right? Do you remember what they are?
Well, I'm not going to say it's Illinois because it's not Illinois.
Right? So you learned that there's a lanai in Florida,
Right.
and that we're snobs because we call it a lanai. That's fact number one. Fact number two, you learned I'm from Brooklyn.
I learned you're from Brooklyn. I also learned you're an introvert just like
I'm
me.
an introvert. See? Three
And
very important facts.
I
And now,
know because, but you, I have to be honest. The first time that I saw you, I was afraid to reach to meet you when we were in Teaneck.
well, that's really sweet. But
But it's
I,
true. It's totally
okay,
true. It's the same way with Alex and everyone else. I'm like, you're gonna
thank
bite. You're
you.
gonna say no. You're gonna reject
Oh
me.
my God, no, 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 never, never. How could somebody reject you? Seriously.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening, and
Thanks for having me, Ken. This was a lot of fun.
take care.
All right. Bye bye.